They always said I was the disappointment of the family. What they didn't know was that I was building an empire while they slept. Growing up as Leah Chen in affluent Palo Alto, I learned early that being the youngest meant being invisible. My parents, successful real estate moguls, had already found their golden child in my older sister Emma. She was everything they wanted: polished, conventionally ambitious, and obsessed with appearances. While Emma pursued her MBA at Stanford and landed a position at Goldman Sachs, I spent my time coding algorithms that would eventually change everything. Every Sunday dinner became my weekly tribunal. Emma would arrive in designer suits, fresh from closing million-dollar deals, while I showed up in my usual black hoodie and jeans. The crystal chandelier cast shadows over conversations that felt more like interrogations than family meals. "Leah, sweetheart, when are you going to get a real job?" my mother would ask, her concern feeling more like judgment. She measured success in stock portfolios and square footage, not in the revolutionary quantum computing systems I was developing during midnight coding sessions. My father would shake his head disapprovingly. "All this computer stuff is just a hobby. You need something stable that contributes to society." He understood tangible assets, not the digital revolution I was quietly leading. Emma never missed an opportunity to shine brighter by dimming my light. "You know, Leah, my firm is always looking for junior analysts. The pay isn't great, but at least you'd be working in the real world instead of hiding behind a computer screen." For 3 years, I endured these weekly humiliations. I watched Emma's achievements celebrated with champagne while my late-night breakthroughs were dismissed as the hobbies of an underachiever. When I tried explaining my quantum encryption protocols, their eyes glazed over. When I mentioned consulting clients, they assumed I was doing basic tech support. The truth was far more complex. While my family saw me as disappointing, I was actually building NovaTech under the pseudonym Alexandra Reed, a quantum computing startup quietly attracting Silicon Valley's biggest names. I kept this secret, partly to prove myself independently, and partly because they wouldn't believe me anyway. Money complicated everything in the Chen household. Despite their wealth, my parents believed in teaching responsibility through financial control. Emma received unlimited access to family accounts, while I got a modest allowance that barely covered necessities, let alone the expensive hardware I needed. This forced me to bootstrap my company using freelance profits, working 18-hour days while they assumed I was being lazy. The emotional manipulation was worse than financial constraints. Every gathering became Emma's showcase while I served as the cautionary tale. She would detail her business trips and client meetings, then turn to me with mock concern. "Poor Leah, still living at home at 25. Not everyone can be a high achiever. Some people are meant for simpler lives." My parents would nod along, their disappointment palpable. They loved me, but loved their vision of what I could become more than who I actually was. Every conversation reminded me that I was failing their expectations. The breaking point came one cold December evening, a week before my 26th birthday. Emma announced her engagement to Marcus, a hedge fund manager, showing off her enormous diamond ring and detailing wedding plans. "Oh, Leah," Emma said with familiar condescension, "you should be my maid of honor. I know you don't have experience with formal events, but I can help you find something appropriate. Maybe something that covers those awful hoodies." My mother clapped excitedly. "What a wonderful idea. Maybe Leah will meet a nice man at the wedding, someone who can help her figure out her life." Marcus, emboldened by his new family status, added his commentary. "I have connections in tech, Leah. Nothing glamorous, mostly entry-level positions, but it could be a start. You can't hide behind computers forever." As they laughed and planned my modest future without consulting me, something inside finally snapped. I had spent years accepting their version of who I was, believing maybe they were right. But watching them dismiss everything I'd worked for while planning to parade me as the family charity case, I was done. That night, I made the decision that would change everything. I had been preparing NovaTech's public launch for months, waiting for the right moment to reveal my identity as founder and CEO. The technology we developed was revolutionary. Quantum systems solving complex problems in seconds rather than years, with applications from medical research to financial modeling. The irony was delicious. While Emma worked for a traditional bank, I had created technology that would make her industry obsolete. While my parents built wealth on physical properties, I had developed virtual systems worth more than all their real estate combined. Over the following weeks, I coordinated with tech publications, prepared investor presentations, and scheduled the reveal. The world was about to meet Alexandra Reed, but first, I had one more family dinner to attend. The Sunday before my debut, I arrived as usual in my black hoodie. Emma and Marcus discussed wedding venues, while my parents offered their typical suggestions about my future. "Marcus has offered to help you interview at his company," my father said. "Just a basic administrative position, but better than what you're doing now." Emma smiled sweetly. "Perfect for you. Nothing too challenging. Answer phones, maybe file papers. Baby steps." As they planned my humble future, my phone buzzed with notifications. The first press releases had gone live, and tech journalists worldwide were scrambling to understand how they'd missed such a significant story. I glanced at messages from reporters, investors, and industry leaders who'd been trying to identify NovaTech's mysterious founder. Tim Cook wanted a meeting. Elon Musk had sent congratulations. Goldman Sachs CEO was requesting a partnership call. "Excuse me," I said quietly, stepping into the living room to answer my phone on speaker so they could hear Sarah, my assistant. "Miss Chen," Sarah's voice filled the room. "The Wall Street Journal wants to confirm tomorrow's front page story. Forbes is asking about next week's cover shoot. We've received acquisition offers from 3 major companies, all starting over $8 billion. The dinner conversation stopped abruptly. Emma's fork clattered as she stared in confusion. My parents looked between me and the phone, struggling to process what they were hearing. "Also," Sarah continued, "NASDAQ requests your presence for next month's opening bell ceremony, and MIT wants to confirm your keynote address at their quantum computing symposium." I returned to the table as the living room television caught everyone's attention. Breaking news flashed across the screen. Tech mystery solved. NovaTech founder revealed as 6-year-old quantum prodigy. The reporter continued. In a stunning revelation that has shocked Silicon Valley, the secretive founder of quantum computing giant NovaTech has been revealed as Leah Chen, a 26-year-old entrepreneur who has been developing revolutionary technology in complete anonymity. The report showed our quantum processors, expert interviews praising our innovations, and speculation about our $10 billion valuation. My professional photograph appeared on screen, looking nothing like the hoodie-wearing disappointment they thought they knew. Emma broke the stunned silence first. "This isn't real. This is some mistake. You can't be?" She frantically searched her phone, finding article after article about NovaTech, her face growing ashen. Marcus stared at me with awe and terror. As a finance professional, he understood the implications. $10 billion, he whispered. "Your company is worth $10 billion. My father slowly connected the dots. "All those late nights, all that computer time, you were building this?" I nodded, sipping water before responding. "Actually, 10 billion is just the initial estimate. Our quantum encryption technology alone is worth more to government contractors. And we haven't announced our SpaceX partnership for Mars communication systems." The room fell silent as my family processed this information. Emma looked ready to cry, her superiority crumbling. My parents sat speechless, calculating how drastically they'd misjudged their daughter. My phone rang again. I showed the screen to everyone. "That's the Secretary of Defense. We're consulting on national cybersecurity." I declined and set it aside. "I'll call back after dinner." Over the next hour, as news alerts flooded our phones and television provided updates on NovaTech's market impact, my family began understanding the magnitude of my achievement. Marcus looked particularly shaken, realizing my algorithms could revolutionize financial modeling. "Why didn't you tell us?" My mother finally asked, tears forming. "All this time, we thought, we were so worried about your future." I considered carefully. "Because you never asked what I was actually working on. You assumed it wasn't important because it didn't look like success in the way you understood it." Emma was grasping the full scope of her misjudgment. "All those times I offered you jobs, all those comments about your clothes." She trailed off, probably realizing how foolish she'd sounded offering career advice to someone who'd built a company worth more than her bank's quarterly earnings. Another call interrupted us, my security head informing me that reporters were gathering outside. Word had spread about my identity, and everyone wanted the story of the quantum prodigy hiding in plain sight. "I should go," I said, standing. "This will be busy, and I don't want media attention at your home." My father caught my arm gently. "Leah, wait. We owe you a massive apology. We completely failed to see who you really are." Looking around at these people who had shaped me through their doubts, I realized something surprising. "I'm not angry. You pushed me to be independent, to prove myself without family support. In a way, you helped make this possible." Emma stood abruptly. "I need to say something. I've been terrible to you. Truly awful. I was so focused on being the successful daughter that I never understood what you were actually accomplishing. I'm ashamed." Over the following months, my family relationship transformed completely. Weekly dinners that had been humiliation exercises became opportunities for them to learn about quantum computing and world-changing technology. My parents gradually became enthusiastic supporters. Emma struggled most with our reverse dynamics. For years, she'd defined herself as the successful sister, while I remained stuck in perpetual adolescence. Discovering I'd surpassed her achievements by orders of magnitude required fundamental self-reevaluation. To her credit, she embraced this challenge with remarkable grace. Rather than becoming bitter, Emma threw herself into understanding my work. Her finance background proved invaluable as we navigated complex investment deals and partnerships. The transformation wasn't immediate. There were awkward moments as we adjusted to new reality, conversations stumbling as old interaction patterns clashed with changed circumstances. But gradually, we built something better. 6 months later, I stood in NASDAQ, preparing to ring the opening bell for NovaTech's public debut. My family was there wearing matching company t-shirts, beaming with pride they'd never shown the disappointing daughter. As the bell rang, launching NovaTech at $12 billion, Emma mouthed, "I'm proud of you." Words I'd waited my entire life to hear. Later, Emma pulled me aside. "I need you to know how sorry I am, not just for comments about clothes or job prospects, but for fundamentally misunderstanding who you are. I spent years protecting my position as the successful daughter instead of seeing your actual successes." These difficult but necessary conversations helped us understand how our family dynamics had evolved unhealthily. We committed to building new interaction patterns based on curiosity rather than judgment, support rather than competition. A year later, NovaTech employed over 5,000 people across 12 countries. Our quantum systems were developing new medications, optimizing renewable energy, and solving previously impossible problems. The company born from rebellion against family expectations had become a force for positive global change. The personal transformation was equally significant. I'd learned to value my judgment over others' expectations, to trust my vision when others couldn't see it. Years of criticism had taught me resilience and independence, but I'd also learned the importance of finding people who could support my authentic self. Looking back on those invisible, undervalued years, I could finally see them as necessary preparation. The dismissal had forced me to develop internal validation systems, becoming confident regardless of external approval. Financial limitations taught efficiency and strategic thinking invaluable for scaling technology companies. Most importantly, the experience taught me to question assumptions about success and failure. My family measured achievement conventionally: prestigious jobs, status markers, social recognition. They hadn't understood that important work often happens quietly, in late-night sessions and experimental laboratories, years before the world recognizes its value. On my 27th birthday, exactly 2 years after the revelation, my family threw a celebration in the same mansion where those painful dinners had occurred. Instead of judgment and disappointment, the room buzzed with excitement about collaborative possibilities. Instead of condescension, conversations focused on mutual respect and shared goals. Emma's toast was the most meaningful moment. 2 years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. Traditional achievements, conventional markers, staying within familiar boundaries. She looked directly at me with warmth and admiration. Leah taught me that real success often looks like failure from outside, that important work happens in obscurity, and that changing the world requires courage to be misunderstood for as long as necessary. The journey from that painful December evening to this celebration had required all of us to grow fundamentally. My parents expanded their success definition beyond traditional boundaries. Emma discovered genuine confidence comes from supporting others rather than diminishing them. I learned true strength means staying true to your vision even when loved ones don't understand. Standing in that room, surrounded by family who now truly saw and celebrated who I was, I felt deep satisfaction from transforming pain into purpose, isolation into innovation, doubt into determination. The quantum systems I'd developed could solve complex problems in seconds, but human problems of family dynamics and authentic relationships had taken years of patient work to resolve. The little girl who once sat silently through critical family dinners had grown into a woman who could change the world while healing the relationships that mattered most. The hoodie-wearing disappointment had become the quantum queen, not by abandoning her authentic self, but by having courage to let that authenticity transform everything around her. The story was ultimately about more than professional success or financial achievement. It was about courage to remain true to yourself when everyone believes you should be different, patience to build something meaningful when no one sees its value, and wisdom to transform criticism into motivation rather than self-doubt. Most importantly, it was about learning that sometimes people who challenge us most severely ultimately help us become who we're meant to be, even unknowingly. My family's doubt pushed me toward independent proof, their restrictions taught resourcefulness, and their inability to understand my work forced me to develop unshakable confidence in my own vision. As I drove home that night, I thought about young people who might be sitting at family tables right now, feeling invisible and misunderstood, nursing dreams that seem impossible to everyone around them. I hoped they would find strength to keep building their own quantum empires, one breakthrough at a time, until the world would finally understand what they had been creating all along.